This is the story of a mystery that modern science has deemed best left in the dark. The story of a tomb sealed not to protect the dead, but for the safety of the living. On Tuesday, officials from Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities issued a brief statement that was destined to be the sensation of the century. They announced the discovery of an intact tomb, dating back to an era historians considered lost. The name of the ruler, Thutmose II, in his little-known, hidden guise, had emerged from the sands of time after 500 years of complete oblivion. Imagine this place. For 5 centuries, the royal tomb remained sealed from the world. Inside, there was no footsteps, no light, no air movement. When archaeologists finally broke the seal, they expected to find gold, scrolls, and the grandeur of history. Instead, something happened that caused even the most seasoned experts to immediately stop their work and seal the entrance again. What could be so terrifying that modern scientists would voluntarily abandon the discovery of a lifetime? The tomb wasn't just old, it was erased. Its name had been erased from ancient royal lists, and the tomb's location was surrounded by such a wall of silence that even professional grave robbers avoided the area for decades. Local legends held that the place wasn't protected by magic. It was protected by a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. When archaeologists first began excavating, they noticed a strange detail. The entrance to the tomb was much deeper than usual and was filled not with just sand, but with layers of crushed quartz and charcoal. This wasn't an architectural design, it was insulation. Layer after layer, the ancient builders erected a barrier, as if trying to keep someone out, or more likely, keep something out. The decision to break the seal wasn't spontaneous. Years of debate preceded it. Historians claimed that within might lie answers to questions about the period of great drought and political upheaval that nearly destroyed the Nile civilization. Old maps and fragile papyri indicated that this burial had been carried out in conditions of the utmost secrecy, according to rules that didn't correspond to any known tradition. Archaeologists explained, this ruler lived in a time of turmoil, when trust was rare and power hung in the balance. But modern technology gave scientists confidence. They had gas detectors, robotic endoscopes, and air filtration systems. They believed that science would protect them from any ancient curses, which they considered simply a product of the imagination. However, local residents saw things differently. The elders of the villages located near the Valley of the Kings guarded their own, unofficial knowledge. They said, some things must remain buried, not because they are valuable, but because they are unfinished. They believed the tomb's peace was part of an ancient agreement that modern humans were about to break. The team ignored these concerns. To them, this was scientific progress. Cameras stood outside the entrance, ready to capture the triumph. No one expected those same cameras to capture a moment of collective horror. The day of the autopsy began in oppressive silence. The desert air was still. When the first heavy stone of black basalt was dislodged, no cloud of dust billowed from the resulting crevice. Instead, a sound emerged, a soft, barely perceptible whistle, like someone taking a deep breath after a long slumber. The sensors immediately began to go crazy. The levels of carbon dioxide, humidity, and pressure inside the tomb began to fluctuate at an inexplicable rate. This did not resemble a normal pressure equalization. It was as if the room was reacting to the presence of people. A microbiology specialist on duty at the entrance noticed the first oddity. On the monitor screens, broadcasting images from the microcamera, dust particles in the air weren't moving randomly. They were arranged in complex geometric patterns, slowly rotating around the central entry point. This was physically impossible without an external force, but there was no wind. The smell was the first thing that made us freeze, one of the researchers would later write in his report. It wasn't the smell of rot or dry dust. It was the scent of ozone and freshly cut grass, an aroma that wouldn't have belonged in a chamber sealed 500 years ago under tons of scorching sand. The smell was so intense that several team members began hallucinating on the spot. When the passage was widened enough to admit a robot with a powerful spotlight, the team gathered around the monitors. What they saw defied logic. The tomb walls weren't decorated with the usual scenes from the Book of the Dead. Instead, the entire surface was covered with tiny, intricately carved mirror plates made of an unknown alloy. The light from the robot's spotlight reflected millions of times, creating the illusion of infinite space. The tomb seemed larger from the inside than from the outside. It looked like a huge, complex mechanism, not a mausoleum. There was no sarcophagus in the center of the hall. Instead, a lone stele stood there, atop which rested a strange object, a perfect sphere of dark, transparent material. But that wasn't the most shocking thing. The camera moved lower, and the experts saw the floor. It was free of centuries-old dust. Fresh flower petals lay on the floor, looking as if they had been picked only minutes ago. But these flowers belonged to plants that had become extinct in this region back in the Middle Kingdom. "That's impossible," the expedition leader whispered. At that moment, one of the sensors measuring biological activity signaled. A heartbeat was detected in the completely empty, sealed tomb. Slow, rhythmic, but it didn't belong to anyone present. At that moment, the situation began to spiral out of control. The lights in the camp began to flicker, although the generators were working properly. The people at the entrance to the tomb felt a sharp drop in temperature, from 40 degrees Celsius to below zero in a matter of seconds. But the decisive factor was the audio signal. The microphones on the robot picked up whispers. These weren't human language. These were sound frequencies that evoked a feeling of primal terror and physical pain in the chest. Several workers fell to their knees, covering their ears. One of the archaeologists, who was closest to the breach, peered inside without the aid of a screen. His face instantly turned pale. He didn't scream. He simply stepped back slowly and said one sentence: "We opened the wrong door." When he emerged into the light, his colleagues noticed his eyes had changed color, and his skin was covered in a strange, frost-like coating. He refused to say what exactly he saw outside the camera's range, but his condition was quite telling. The order for immediate evacuation and resealing was given within 3 minutes. There was no discussion. Fear overcame curiosity. The experts, who had been talking about the importance of science that morning, were now personally pelting the entrance with rocks and filling it with quick-drying mortar. Several months have passed since then. The excavations were officially declared mothballed due to ground instability and the risk of collapse. But everyone who was there knows the ground was as stable as ever. What really happened in the tomb of Thutmose II? Analysis of the preserved data revealed something incredible. The dust particles moving in patterns were not dust, but complex nanostructures of organic origin. The sphere in the center of the hall was not an object. It was an energy source that maintained a different time loop within the tomb. It seems the ancient Egyptians found a way to freeze space and time, creating a kind of capsule where life didn't cease, but simply slowed to a near standstill. And this capsule wasn't created to save the king. It was a trap for something that couldn't be killed, only contained. Today, the entrance to the tomb is once again hidden under sand. The Egyptian authorities have installed a 24-hour guard around this sector, ordered to keep anyone within a kilometer. The tomb sleeps. 500 years of silence were broken for only a few minutes, but that was enough to understand. We are not the masters of this world and its history. There are doors that should not be opened. There are secrets that protect us with their silence. And perhaps in another 500 years, humanity will be wise enough to understand what exactly it found on that hot Tuesday in the Valley of the Kings. For now, silence has returned to the tomb, and the air within is once again still.